Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in the lesson. Today, we are looking at reported speech. We are going to look at the rules that guide reported speech, and then we are going to look at how we can report questions and answers. So, without wasting much of your time, let's get started with the definitions. Okay, so reported speech is just conveying what someone else has said. It can be direct speech. That's when we use the exact words that someone else has said, and we put those words in quotation marks. And when we talk about quotation marks, we are talking about enclosing the exact words that someone else has said. In indirect speech, we do not put words in quotation marks because we paraphrase them. We write them in our own way, but we maintain the meaning. Reported speech is also referred to as indirect speech. Indirect speech or direct speech is very important in communication. It makes us clear, it helps us to give what other people said, and sometimes we can report what we said. You can say what I said was, or I said that. you know when we repeat what somebody else said or what we said, either directly by quoting them or by paraphrasing what they said, we are involved and engaged in reported speech. Let's begin looking at direct speech. What is it? This is where you say someone else's words and you say exactly the way they were said. You put them under quotation marks and you use a verb we call reporting verb. So direct speech involves the use of reporting verbs. Reporting verbs could be said, told, announced, whatever the mood and the emotion were. The choice of a reporting verb will or should actually reflect that. Let me give an example. Mwanza said, I didn't find the house I was looking for in Mansa. You can see that we've got Mwanza, who is the subject, and then a reporting verb, which is said. And we are separating that part with a comma. And after that, we say the exact words that Mwanza said. We put those words in quotation marks. Second example, I'm going to the cinema tonight. We put a comma, we close the quotation mark, and we write John said. Again, you can see if John said something, it would be reflected. What is the structure and rules for direct speech? Direct speech starts or ends with the subject and the reporting verb, as we have seen so far, and then the exact words that somebody else said are put in quotation marks. And remember, the first letter inside the quotation marks is always capitalized. Let's look at an example. The teacher said. Here, the teacher is the subject, said is the reporting verb. You have done a great job in your assignments. Now, you starts with a capital letter because it's a first letter in the quotation marks. And you need to end your sentence with the appropriate punctuation mark. If this was a question, at the end of that direct speech, we are going to put a question mark and then close with a closing quotation mark. How do we position reporting verbs in direct speech? We can put at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. When we put at the beginning, you start with the subject, followed by a reporting verb, and then you put a comma. Let's look at an example. He said we need to leave early tomorrow. If you look at this sentence, he said is the subject, he is the subject, said is the reporting verb, and a comma follows. And then open quotation marks, you put whatever somebody said inside, put the appropriate ending punctuation mark, which is a full stop in our case, then you close the bracket. So you remember, at whatever point when you write this, let the punctuation mark be inside the quotation marks. We said that you can put the reporting verb in the middle. Let me give an example. I think, comma, he said, comma. In this case, we are starting with part of the direct speech, and then we are putting the subject and the reporting verb. We put a comma again, and then we complete the thought. Let's read it again. I think, he said, that we should go to the meeting. Now, when you look at this, the way it is written, there are commas separating both parts of the direct speech from the subject and the reporting verb. We also mentioned that you can put the reporting verb at the end. Let's look at an example. Let's meet at 3 p.m. As you can see on your screen, let's meet at 3 p.m. is enclosed in quotation marks, and then there's a comma, and the subject and the reporting verbs are at the end. This should be fairly simple for you to follow, but if you cannot follow, please remember you can ask a question in the comments, or you can, if there's something that I've left out, feel free to add to it. And most importantly, if you have not yet subscribed, please, this is the time for you to subscribe. Let's talk about indirect speech. Indirect speech paraphrases the original statement without quoting directly, meaning that we change the word. Sometimes we might even change the word order or use different words from what the original speaker said, and therefore we do not need to put those words in quotation marks. And we use words or conjunctions like that, if, or, whether. These are very important in connecting or in reporting what somebody else said. Let's look at an example. If we have got a direct call, if a direct speech like I am happy, how can you report that using indirect speech? You can say something like, she said that she was happy. She said that she was happy. I'm going to talk about some of the changes that you might have noticed from this statement. So when you are changing from direct to indirect speech, tense changes. This phenomenon is called backshifting. And let's look at different tenses. The present tense becomes past simple, meaning the present simple tense becomes past simple. Let's look at an example. I work hard, she said. I work hard, she said, because she is speaking at this moment. And when we report it seconds, minutes, or even days later, we can't represent those words as if they are being spoken now. So all we say is take it to the past. So we can say, she said that she worked hard. She said that she worked hard. Then the past simple becomes the past perfect. Let's look at an example. I visited Paris, he said. Now, this person is talking to us today that in the past he visited Paris. So when we report that, we are going to change the past simple tense to the past perfect. We are going to say he said that he had visited Paris. And then will becomes would. Let's look at an example. I will call you, she said. When we report that using indirect speech, it becomes she said that she would call me. Let's look at pronoun changes in indirect speech. When you are reporting in indirect speech, or when you are changing direct speech to indirect speech, pronouns change to meet the new context or to suit the new context. Let's look at an example. I am happy to help you. I am happy to help you. If this is changed to reported speech or indirect speech, it becomes he said that he. So I becomes he, am becomes was, happy to help me, and you becomes me because this person was talking to me at the moment they were speaking. Let's look at time and place expressions in indirect speech. So like we have seen so far, pronouns change, time also change, and the way we express it changes. For example, now becomes then, today becomes that day, tomorrow becomes the next day. I would request you, if possible, just to memorize these and see how they change. And then yesterday becomes the day before, here becomes there, this becomes that. Give an example for now. I am leaving now, he said. When you change that to indirect speech, it becomes he said that he was leaving then, because that's what we said. We said that now becomes then. If it's today, if somebody says, I am leaving today, obviously you know that today changes to that day. You can say he said that he was leaving. Let's look at reporting yes or no questions. You know, there are questions where someone asks you, and they ask you a question and the expected answer is yes or no. For example, if somebody says, do you live in Lusaka? There's no explanation. It's either you live in Lusaka or you don't. Therefore, when you are reporting such questions, you use the word if or whether to introduce the reported yes or no questions. Let's look at an example. Do you live in Lusaka? When we change that, it becomes he asked if I lived in Lusaka. He asked whether I lived in Lusaka. That's how you do. And what you are doing here is you are just changing this question into a statement. Let's see how we deal with WH questions. Questions like what, who, when. When you deal with these questions, you are not going to use the word if or the word whether as we have seen in the previous section. What you need to do is to retain the question word, but change the structure to a statement. Let's look at an example. Where are you going? Where are you going? When we change this to indirect speech, we retain the where. So you say, she asked me where I was going. What are you doing? She asked me what I was doing. Who are you with? She asked me who I was with. That's how it works. Let's look at reporting commands and requests. If someone is giving us a command or a request, how can we report that? When you are reporting a request or a command, use words like told, asked, commanded, requested. Again, like I said at the beginning of the lesson, just make sure the reporting verb that you use depicts the emotions involved in what someone was saying. So use reporting verbs followed by an infinitive. Let's look at a positive command or a positive request. Close the door, she said, or close the door, she commanded. When you change that to indirect speech, it becomes, she told me to close the door. She told me to close the door. You can see how we are using the infinitive to close. Let's look at a negative example. Don't talk during the movie, she said. She told me not to talk during the movie. Here we are just using the negative infinitive. Let's look at how we can report modal verbs. Some modal verbs change in indirect speech. Can becomes could. And let's look at an example. I can help you. When we change that to indirect speech, it becomes he said he could help me. Will becomes would. When we change that to indirect speech, it becomes, we can say, I will call. She said that she would call. May becomes might. May becomes might. When we change that, for example, in this sentence which says it may rain, we can say, she said that it might rain. She said that it might rain. Well, we have come to the end of the lesson, and my sincere hope is that you will use this lesson just as a beginning to start studying and learning more about the lessons. But let me also remind you that if you are a person that wants to read and get more examples, then I've got an article and you're going to see the link in the description. Thank you so much for joining. And before you leave this video, please subscribe. I'll see you in the next lesson.